Hey all, Pixel here, Improbable Garage, and I'm in the van and it's got a new shiny problem, which is I can't get out of the van. And to be very clear, the lock is not the issue. This is jammed. If you look at the lock, it's only coming about halfway up. It's not unlocking. I have tried doing it from outside with a key and it's stuck. This is the door that video where I did the wandering around that junkyard with weird and interesting stuff. I was looking for a replacement driver's door latch because it had an issue, and I think it has now broken more, and that's why this is now jammed. So I gotta take this all apart and see what the heck's going on. It's gonna be interesting because this has got two screws underneath here that I may be able to reach, but this has got screws all the way around, and if I can't get those out, I may have to pull the driver's seat, and I may end up having to pull the driver's seat anyway just to give myself room to work in the door. But either way, I gotta get this door panel off and see what the heck's going on. And hopefully I can fix it, because I went looking and nobody makes a new latch for this. New old stock is like $150, $200, and used of unknown condition is like $80 to $100. So I'm hoping this is something that's fixable, but we'll find out. All right, hopefully you can kind of see. Steering wheel's sort of in the way. These vintage style Chevy door handles here, the old school ones, are held on by a clip that's clipped on. If it's installed right, the clip is clipped this way. So you need to get yourself one of these, or some people can do it with a rag, feeding it the same way that I'm feeding this in to try and catch the clip. But what you're trying to do is push that clip. It rides in a little ridge, and you want to push that clip back and then remove the tool, and then this will pop off. And that's that clip I was talking about. Because when I hear it'll snap it back, that's the position it's in when it's locked. What I was talking about with a rag is some people have luck. I've always had difficulty with it, but some people are able to get a rag in between there and sort of wiggle it back and forth and catch these two little tines and pull this back. But if you're gonna be working on these a bunch, just get yourself one of these. I've literally had this thing since I was like 16 years old, when I bought my 1970 Chevelle as my first car I bought myself, and they just don't go bad. All right. I'm really hoping I can get onto this screw with this, because it's a very long screw and I don't want to do it with my hand because I'm lazy. Yes, this one might be easier. Random FYI, if your G20, if your Chevy G van armrests are in bad shape, this one's got a little split in it, but I'm not, that doesn't bother me. But if yours are all trashed, or you're missing them or whatever, 68 to 72 Chevy pickup armrests look different, but fit. They've got a different style front, but they will work on your door panel. You can get them in a bunch of different colors to match your interior. So if you need them, do that. Don't pay a bunch of money for used ones or new old stock ones unless you need your van to look completely original. If you get a pair of the Chevy pickup ones for both sides, nobody will ever know you have the wrong ones. I got one more up there that I'm going to have to get a different tool for. All right, so I know it's really not visible, and I'm sorry about that, but there's a screw right here that even that stubby screwdriver wouldn't fit. This, I have enough room. I could probably put a socket on a 1/4 inch drive and do what I'm about to do, but I'm going for maximum like ease as far as distance, which is you get yourself a 1/4 inch ratcheting wrench, you get a bit that would go in a screw gun, and then you literally need the depth of the bit. And if you're really pressed for space, probably won't work because you won't have enough room to back the screw out. But if you really have to, you literally can put it on here on them and cut the rest of it off. But like I said, if you're that desperate, you're probably not going to have any room to unscrew the screw. But if you do it with a ratcheting wrench, a little bit of care about how you hold the end of it. And let me get this screw out where I have no space whatsoever. Yeah, just barely the two by the seat. I could get the screwdriver on them and turn them, but by the time I got to the end of the screw, it was hard to get it out and the thing out. So this is now free. Getting I can. Normally there's a plastic sort of barrier in here. That's long gone on mine. I've sealed up the holes with kill mat, which is not really a great choice, but is the choice that I made, and now I have to live with it. So this is the rod for the let me actually get the door handle back. Yikes. Sorry, you're like dangling precariously off the steering wheel, so you may take a header at any time. I'm going to pull the clip out of the handle so that I can put it back on here. And these will go on in any angle, so if you don't like the angle that your door handle is, if it's easier for you to pull it or, you know, whatever, pop it off and it's a spline, so it'll go in any direction. So I'm wondering if I yank up on this, can I? Okay. Not sure what has failed in here exactly. So, oh wow, that latch is way down there, isn't it? Yikes. Okay, so this hole's not helpful. We're gonna go for this hole down here. And you can't see anything, but don't worry, I can't see anything either. So, one thing I'm gonna check. Stay. No, I can't because I unplugged the lock. Maybe I can do it from the other door. But, so one thing that can happen, which not appear to be the case here, is your lock actuator is a solenoid. Basically, it's an electromagnet with a slug in the middle. That off the back of that metal slug is the hook that hooks into the door lock. And depending which direction you push the switch, it applies electricity to that electromagnet in one way or another, which either pulls the slug this way or pulls the slug this way. And that's what makes it thunk back and forth. But that slug can get rusted in there. So even if the electromagnet sounds like it's functioning, even if it's making a noise, that slug may not actually be moving. In this case, because this was moving halfway up and all the way down, and because I already had a door lock problem, or door latch problem, I suspect my problem is not with that. I'm trying to do this all completely by feel, and I feel that won't work. So what I'm trying to do is pull up and see what it's getting limited. Yeah, okay. There's definitely, I can push this down, and when I pull up it hits a hard stop, and I'm just trying to figure out if that hard stop is the, no, because I don't think it is. I think I can, yeah, I can pull the lock actuator up a tiny bit. It doesn't want to move, but I can force it up a little bit to the point where it rattles around and that doesn't make this go up any further. So all of my problems are in the latch itself. Did that just give me... Ha-ha! I don't know what I did, but jiggling everything got the door to pop open. So let's get that damn latch out of there right now before I relatch the door by accident. Yeah, I have no idea what I just did there. I was just moving pieces. Anything I could grab, I just kind of pushing it. I must have just, whatever was jammed, I got it free. But so now these 3 bolts are what takes the lock mechanism out. See, now I was almost expecting it to do what it's been doing, which has been to drop the upper jaw, but of course now it's going to mock me by working properly. So one of the unique, let's call it joys, of 80s and 90s American car manufacturer vehicles is that they were transitioning from SAE hardware to metric hardware in their vehicles, and you never know what's going to be what. Because like the body shell, they made these vans from 71 to 95. And so if you're trying to, like, if somebody was quizzing you on what was going to be what, as far as SAE or metric, logic would say that the body was going to be all SAE. Because, you know, why the hell would you change it? You've been using the same stamping forever. It would cost money to change it over. So yeah, just leave it. No, those 3 bolts, metric. Now, I'm trying to get the rod that goes to this out. I've got the little clip off of it, but I can't get it to pop out of the door latch. There we go. That'll be fun to get later. Oh, you son of a... Okay. This rod has a 90-degree on the end. I don't know how much you can see. This rod has a 90-degree on the end, and there was a little retainer, so that when you slid this in, it would then be able, you could lock it into the lock. So this one had the same, for the latch, had the same retainer, so I assumed it was the same deal, and I just had to push it down, and why wouldn't it go down? No, it's a Z shape. So I need to pivot this assembly this way relative to it, or the lock this way relative to it, to get it out. And based on where the window mechanism is, rotating the lock's not going to happen. So now I've got to remove this thing just to drop it in the door so I can unhook it so that I can get the lock clear. Actually, can I even get the lock out with the window in place? Oh God. Please, Chevy, please don't do this to me. Anyway, bringing some light to the game. So, turns out I don't need it, but this setup, if you're trying to get these out, this is the trick. Big tip screwdriver, preferably, I don't have one because mine I managed to break, but preferably get a screwdriver that's got a hex drive at the base of it here. And then you can either slide the wrench on that fixes that hex drive or grab it with a pair of vice grips. And then if these don't want to come out, rather than stripping out, what you do is lean into them as hard as you can with the screwdriver while you crack them loose with the vice grips as a lever. Like I said, I lucked into these for whatever reason. All just came out. So now this is hitting the bottom of the window, of course. I'm going to have to cut this door. Oh, there we go. That's clear. Can't drop enough because of the window mechanism. Oh my God. I I have so much hate in my heart right now. Yeah, dear God, this is trapped behind the window. The window mechanism that's on this side is just trapped. If it wasn't for the rod that's on it that won't come out, I might be able to rotate it. It's caught on the lock, which I completely forgot existed. Okay. Alright, I got the lock cylinder out. That was a pain. I have no idea if this will be helpful to somebody, but I found the little clip which has fallen in the bottom of the door, of course. My best luck, after trying multiple things, was getting a screwdriver from underneath, between the clip and the lock cylinder, and rotating it this way to bring the clip up to the top. And as I did that, it also pried it off enough that I could then easily pop it off. Don't try and come straight out. That's what I was doing before. It just doesn't work. But like rotate it on it, and because of the way it clips on there, it can't just spin. So it ends up pulling one side off, and then you're dealing with half the resistance. So the lock is now free of that. Yeah, the lock is like this. So as you feed it in, it hooks into the latch, and that was why I couldn't move it for that part. So now, I was about to say I need to find the next thing it's caught on, but I know the next thing it's caught on. Alright, that's the secret tech that I should have done at the beginning, which is this window channel. There's a bolt here and there's a bolt over here. And if you undo those, you can get your flashlight out of the door. You can pivot. I probably can slide this whole assembly down and out this way, but I'm going to try not to do that, discover I have to, and then get to that later. But that, there we go. That may be the final piece of the puzzle. This is the rod that I couldn't get disconnected, and there's the latch. So yeah, you got to get that window mechanism out of the way to have any chance of getting the latch out of the door. Putting that together is going to be a nightmare because half the pieces are in the bottom of the door. But let's go take this and find out what's going on. All right, instantaneously I see my problem. There is supposed to be a spring between these two jaws because the latch mechanism, which is, let's see, yeah, this is when you push the button on the outside. This is when you pull the inside door handle. Right now they're not doing anything because the door's open, but if you do that, now that isn't doing anything. But if the lock is in the up position, that then disengages these jaws at the back there. I'm not sure how much you're even able to see here, but yeah, see that's the jaws latched together. When this is in the up position, let's see what's happening here. So if I pull, so when I pull on this in the lock position, this whole assembly pivots up here. This one just got a lever that basically pushes this. So doing this and doing that is the exact same motion. That doesn't do anything. If I push this into the down position, what it does, which is actually a really clever thing, is its bar, see how this bar is being moved? That bar has, see that little folded over area? When the lock is in the unlocked position, it moves that down so it catches this bar. And then this bar, see how it starts bringing that out? And that allows the jaws to disengage. And if they had a spring, what would happen is the spring would pull them together and they'd want to be open. So as this disengaged, they'd snap down this way. That's fully unlocked. And then It's not going to work properly because I think that's the first stage latch. If your van has ever got the door locked, but the door's rattling a bunch in the frame, it's because you're only on that first lock and you got to slam it harder. And then as you slam it harder, it locks down to there. That's pulled it fully into the jaw. This double lock is just an extra bit of security, and then that unlocks it. But what's been my problem has been this spring has been either broken off or has been damaged in some way. And so what's been happening for a while now is the bottom jaw kind of works properly because it just pivots back and forth, and the action of moving the door is kind of doing what it needs to do. This top jaw, what's been happening is as it moves out, this will do this, and then this top jaw will be caught and unable to move up. And then of course the striker can't come in because that's in the way. And so what I've had to do is pull the inside door handle, which frees all this up, push this up, and then let go of the door handle, and it resets it. So the two issues with this lock are, one, that spring is gone, so I'm going to have to find a replacement spring. I'm pretty sure I can go to the hardware store and think that'll work. And the other thing I'm noticing is that the rivet holding this upper jaw is very loose. So, and that looks like it's worn inside the lock there. All right, so went to the local Ace Hardware, picked up a couple springs. Not sure which is going to work better, which is why I grabbed two. These are the two that both would hook around both ends of these and fit there with a little bit of tension when this was fully open. Because you don't want the spring loose when it's the jaws, you know, when it's closest, because it might pop off. But this has just the slightest bit of tension on it. All right, I had to plug you into a cord, and it's stupidly short because I don't know where my good one is. But basically, sorry, this is really hard to show. I'm trying to latch this, but it doesn't want to work because I'm using entirely the wrong sized thing. Yeah, the big fear I have, which I can't display to you well, is I fear the spring may be too strong. Because it takes a lot of effort to shut the jaws, but then the hardest part is getting the jaws to work in the right configuration. And I don't know how much of that's just me screwing it, because like that's the full jaws open, and that's the first click. I don't know if it's the spring's problem or if it's just me fucking up, but and then that's the second click, and that's pretty darn tight. But I think it's going to work once it's actually in there. Oh, and I cut myself. Once it's actually in there, and it can only, you know, the pin can only go in and push both equally, unlike right now where it's kind of, what I'm trying to do is shifting it from side to side. But I think that's going to take care of that. I've decided to ignore the loose piece up here, because now that it's on the spring, it's pulling it this way. It's not flopping around the way it was. All right, so I've got the lock back in, the rod back in, and the door handle system thinglet in, and this in. Still haven't hooked up the power door lock or reassembled the window track so that it works. Can't really give you great suggestions, like step-by-step instructions on how to do this, because a lot of it's just fiddly BS. But the big important one is this rod. You can just see the end of here that runs back here to the lock assembly. Needs to go on top of the window rail that's spot welded here, and on this side of the lever for the window assembly, which is about here when the window's up. So it is not possible to install the lock and then install that rod, because it has to, it goes boop, boop, boop. So you have to be able to feed it from below and then rotate it. So the way I found ended up working was to get the lock into physically inside the door, and then basically lay it on relative to here, lay it this way, hook that in, and then basically that has it hooked in, and then you can kind of tip the whole thing up into place with the rod, and you have to just make sure where the rod falls. And then once you've got that, like, you don't have to have it hooked to this end, you just have to have it hooked on this end. And then once you get, like, I put just a single bolt in to hold that in here. And then this piece you have to kind of drop down, hook onto, because it's got that same shape on the other end. Hook it onto there. And then the other part of the window runs right here, so you can't just slide this straight in. So what you end up needing to do is kind of get this in with the pieces that these hold on the wrong side of that, and then sort of tip the whole thing, including, like, I think I pulled on the rod. See how the rod moves? I think I pulled on the rod to let me rotate this enough to sort of walk it, or these three ears around until I could get it in and screwed in. And then over here, I don't know how well it shows up, but if you can see those little, like, half moons of different color, the whole lock assembly is now this way. That's just something I ended up having to do. I don't think that's related to my repair, but with the lock assembly nice and tight, it needed to be this way because it was sucking the door too far in. Like, when I would shut the door, so like right now, more or less flush, maybe it's in a little bit, but it was way in. So moving that lock assembly this way towards the front edge cured a lot of that, and you can actually see that it's been wearing away the metal here, so it's been too far back possibly the entire time. So right now the latch works. The lock rod now works, and those springs are fine because the frame is going to be too tight, and it's hard to just lock the door. It's hard to push the door and get it to latch because that spring is definitely tighter than the old one, but a little bit of force when you slam it and it's fine. All right, more progress made. It's now the evening. The sun's a pain in the butt, but I've got the actuator for the power door locks in, and I've got the lock assembly back in and hooked up. So at this point, oh, and I've got the window track back in. So at this point, I'm going to test whether the window works properly and whether the lock works properly by plugging these in, because the door panel that was here is going to get a sand down and a paint, because I've been meaning to do that forever. I got them off another van, so they didn't even match the blue here, let alone the mostly red interior. But the whole latch assembly does what it's supposed to at this point. This pulls what it's supposed to, so it's all good. So this should fix it. I still have to put a little bit more grease on that. I was very hesitant to grease it heavily because I realized I was going to be holding on to it a bunch. I didn't want to just coat my hands. So that's going to get greased. The track of the window is going to get greased since I'm in here. All right, so I got some grease on the things. They're just sure. Remember how this was jamming halfway up, so it's not going all the way up and down properly. So the window. Okay, the window just did something weird. Okay, I have to fix the window track. The window track's not right because it's pulling the window off. So I'll have to fix the window track. I think it's twisted or something. But yeah, making progress. That's gotten sanded down and primed with some metal etch primer. I'm gonna let that dry overnight and then put my color coat on it. I was gonna pull the passenger side, but I decided I don't want to. So I'll deal with that another time. Hot damn, but that looks good, doesn't it? So that is Tropical Glitz paint. They specialize in paint for lowriders, actually, and most of their stuff is designed to be gun sprayed, but they'll do some of, not everything they sell, but a lot of the stuff they'll also do in spray cans. So that was after priming with just regular metal etch. I did one coat of galactic silver, very thin coat, just so that I wouldn't be trying to cover up the sort of greenish gray color of the primer. So this was just enough to put that silver tint base coat on. Then, like you saw, I put effectively 4 coats of this on, just coming from different angles. And it came out just as good as I hoped. That looks really nice. It's got a really nice... Selective Cherry is a very good name for this color. It's really rich, and it's not quite a candy, so it's not going to like darken up a lot when you put more coats on it. But if you do put a nice, you know, multiple coats on, it gets that really rich color, which I'm kind of skimping on, but it's also just a door panel. It's never going to look super, you're never going to get that deep richness you'll get on like the exterior of a vehicle, you know, long, smooth panels. So that's going to dry, and then I haven't decided whether I'm just going to use a regular can of spray clear or whether I'm going to break out the gun and everything and shoot clear on it. If I decide I'm going to do it that way, I'm going to pull the other door panel at the same time, get that paint on that so that I can clear both of them at the same time, which probably makes the most sense. I'm being a little bit lazy because the door panels, I didn't like super perfectly prep them or sand them down or anything, because they're door panels. They're going to get banged up and scratched up. Though more clear would make that survive better, I guess. I'll figure it out. And then there were 2. That's the passenger side. That's the driver's side one. Unfortunately, I tried to put a second coat on the driver's side one, and the cans started spitting and failing to spray. It still's got paint in it, but it's just not spraying. That's always a problem I've had with those, like, not factory filled cans, the ones where the, you know, a paint shop fills them. I feel like I never get the last of the paint out of them, but I've also used that can for a few other little projects here and there, mostly die casts. But it still looks good enough, like it's now a little bit uneven, but I think if I bury both of these in clear, it'll look plenty good for my purposes. Our coat is done. So these have got 2-ish coats. It's very orange peely. I'm not surprised. I was trying to use too small a gun, really. I was using a little like touch-up gun, thinking, they're not that big, it'll be fine. And when your spray pattern's this wide, it's hard to get really good coat. But the most important part is they've got clear on them, so I'm not going to chip the paint. And then I can always go back and try and buff them out or something later if it really bugs me. All right, I moved these out here because the wind picked up and was blowing the dust around the garage, and unfortunately got a little bits in the paint. But man, look at these things in the sun. Like, oh, that's just so good. They're zip tied down in a place where they're going to be covered by the armrests, just so the wind doesn't pick them up and blow them across the yard. But like, they're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I know I keep saying that, but I want to make it very clear that painting is not my forte, or 5-tay or 6-tay or any of it. But these came out looking pretty darn good for what they are. And these are gonna stay out here. Yeah, wow, got a lot of bits in them. That's really frustrating. Fortunately, it's gonna be largely invisible when they're installed. Anybody who's studying my door panels very closely, whatever. But they look great, at least for the amount that I need them to look great. So these are gonna stay out here for until tomorrow. Give them a good chance to get good and hard. That clear fully set up, and then I'll put them back in. All right, door back together. That looks pretty. Can't believe I've been driving around with that scraped up blue one for so long. The rest of the door looks like hell. We're not getting into that right now. Yeah, that looks really good. Now this doesn't look so great. That was the nicest part of the door. But yeah, I'm happy with that. That one over there, you can see the lock switch connector is sticking out. It's because this thoroughly disassembled itself and had been glued together by me at least twice before. So I need to track it down. The problem is I need to track one down with L connectors on the bottom, because all the ones I can find everywhere have a diagonal line of 3. So worst case, I may end up having to buy one of those and then fit this into it. But it's okay. I almost never lock the doors. My passenger never needs to lock the doors. So no big deal. But yeah, now my door works again. I've actually fixed this lock. It's not perfect because I never dealt with that loose rivet on the top, but the lock is fully functional now. It's all lubed up, so it works nice. This is lubed up and works nice. This looks way better. So yeah, that's it. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll talk to you later.